What if I told you that almost everything you have heard about potatoes and blood sugar is dangerously incomplete, missing a critical piece of science that could let you enjoy your favorite comfort food again? For years, doctors, diabetes educators, and every blood sugar guide on the internet have warned that potatoes are off limits, especially for anyone over 60. And to be fair, the numbers seem terrifying. A plain baked potato can spike your glucose by 60 to 100 points in under half an hour, with a glycemic index higher than white bread or even table sugar. But here is what the medical establishment has failed to tell you for over a decade. A simple preparation method, something that takes about 5 minutes and doesn't require any expensive equipment, can physically change the molecular structure of that potato. Recent clinical trials have repeatedly shown that this one change can reduce the blood sugar spike by up to 33%, and in some cases even more. Keep watching as we walk through 6 research-backed methods ranked from least to most effective, including one technique that literally transforms potato starch into a form your body cannot digest. The science behind the spike. Before we dive into the 7 methods, you need to understand exactly what is happening inside your body when you eat a hot, freshly cooked potato without any preparation. When you take that first bite, your saliva immediately begins breaking down the starch using an enzyme called alpha amylase. Within 15 minutes, glucose starts flooding into your bloodstream, not a slow trickle, but a full-scale avalanche. By the 30-minute mark, your blood sugar has likely spiked 60 to 100 points, depending on the size of the potato and your individual insulin sensitivity. Your pancreas, which has been working hard for decades, suddenly scrambles to dump massive amounts of insulin to clear that glucose. But here is the cruel part that nobody explains to seniors. As you age, your cells become less responsive to insulin, a condition called insulin resistance. The glucose stays in your blood longer, damaging blood vessels, stressing your kidneys, and affecting your vision. And then comes the rebound. 2 to 3 hours later, that massive insulin surge overshoots, dropping your blood sugar below normal. Now you feel shaky, hungry, irritable, and craving more carbohydrates. This is the blood sugar roller coaster, and it is destructive not just for diabetics, but for anyone over 60 whose pancreas has been sprinting for decades. So why are potatoes uniquely dangerous compared to other starches? It comes down to the type of starch they contain. Potatoes are dominated by a molecule called amylopectin, which has a highly branched structure with enormous surface area. Your digestive enzymes can attack it from hundreds of points simultaneously, breaking it down almost instantly. Other starches, like those in beans or whole grains, contain more amylose, which is linear and compact, making it much harder for enzymes to access. The goal of every method on this list is to either slow down digestion or physically convert amylopectin into structures that behave more like amylose. Let us begin with the simplest method and work our way up to the most powerful. Method 6, keeping the skin on. The first method is almost laughably simple, yet research confirms it makes a measurable, repeatable difference in your blood sugar response. The skin of a potato contains roughly 2 grams of fiber for a medium-sized russet, and slightly more for red potatoes or sweet potatoes. That fiber does something important. It creates a physical barrier that slows down the digestive enzymes trying to reach the starch inside the potato. Imagine trying to eat a piece of fruit with the peel on versus peeled. The peel takes time to break down, and during that time, the sugary interior is partially protected. The same principle applies to potatoes. When you eat a peeled potato, the starch is completely exposed and your amylase enzymes attack it from all sides simultaneously, breaking it down at maximum speed. Leaving the skin on means the fiber mixes with the starch during digestion, forming a matrix that delays enzymatic access. Studies comparing peeled versus unpeeled potatoes show a modest but consistent reduction in the glycemic response, typically in the range of 10 to 12%. That is not going to transform your health on its own. But remember, these methods stack. A 12% reduction from keeping the skin on, combined with a 30% reduction from cooling, combined with a 40% reduction from food sequencing, and you are looking at a total reduction that can exceed 70%. This method also explains why mashed potatoes are absolutely the worst possible way to eat potatoes for blood sugar control. When you mash a potato, you remove the skin, you mechanically destroy every cell wall, and you essentially pre-digest the starch. Your enzymes barely have to do anything. The glycemic index of instant mashed potatoes can exceed 90, higher than most soft drinks. So here is your practical rule. Never eat mashed potatoes, never eat peeled boiled potatoes. Instead, bake, roast, steam, or air fry your potatoes with the skin intact. Potato wedges with the skin on, roasted until crispy. Baked potatoes where you eat the entire skin. Cubed potatoes tossed in olive oil and roasted with rosemary, skin on. And if you are making potato salad, use small red or gold potatoes and leave the skins on. Every bit of fiber helps, and every layer of protection matters. Method 5. Adding protein and fat. Now we are moving away from the potato itself and into the territory of what you eat alongside it. And this is where the numbers become genuinely impressive. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition tested the glycemic response to a plain mashed potato versus a potato eaten as part of a complete meal containing a chicken breast, olive oil, and a side salad. The glycemic index of the pure mashed potato measured 108, which is higher than table sugar. When the same potato was eaten with the protein and fat, the glycemic index dropped to 54. That is a 50% reduction, not a rounding error, not a statistical anomaly, but a repeatable finding published in one of the world's most respected nutrition journals. How does this work? Two powerful mechanisms that work in tandem. First, protein and fat significantly slow gastric emptying. Your stomach has to work harder to break down and release the food into your small intestine, where glucose absorption actually occurs. Instead of a tsunami of glucose hitting your bloodstream in 15 minutes, the glucose trickles in over 60 to 90 minutes, giving your pancreas time to respond without panicking. Second, protein stimulates the release of a hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. GLP-1 does three beautiful things. It further slows digestion, it helps your pancreas release insulin more efficiently, and it actually improves the sensitivity of your muscle cells to that insulin. For seniors dealing with age-related insulin resistance, this is like sending reinforcements to a tired army. The practical rule is dead simple and should become your permanent habit. Never, under any circumstances, eat a potato by itself. Always pair it with a solid protein source: chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, tofu, or even a generous portion of cheese, and a healthy fat like olive oil, butter, avocado, or nuts. A baked potato topped with chili and shredded cheese is vastly better for your blood sugar than a plain baked potato. Roasted potato wedges served alongside 2 scrambled eggs and a drizzle of avocado oil will produce a completely different glucose curve than those same wedges eaten as a snack. This single change can cut your post-meal spike nearly in half, and it costs you nothing extra, just a small shift in how you build your plate. Method 4. Using vinegar before your potato. When I first encountered the research on vinegar and blood sugar, I was genuinely skeptical. This sounded like the kind of folk remedy that gets passed around on internet forums without any real scientific backing, but the data is surprisingly robust and the mechanism is well understood. Researchers at Lund University in Sweden, the same institution that conducted the landmark studies on cooled potatoes, ran a controlled trial specifically on vinegar and potatoes. They tested 4 different meals: freshly boiled potatoes eaten hot, cold stored potatoes eaten without vinegar, cold stored potatoes with a vinaigrette dressing, and white bread as a control. All meals contained identical amounts of carbohydrate. The results were clear and compelling. Cold storage alone improved the blood sugar response, but when they added vinegar dressing to the cold-stored potatoes, the combination produced the lowest glycemic and insulin response of any meal tested. Why does vinegar work so well? The acetic acid in vinegar does 3 specific things inside your body. First, it directly inhibits the activity of alpha amylase, the enzyme in your saliva and small intestine that breaks starch into glucose. Less enzyme activity means slower starch digestion, plain and simple. Second, acetic acid slows gastric emptying through a different pathway than protein, meaning the effects are additive. Third, and most fascinating, acetic acid appears to directly improve insulin sensitivity in skeletal muscle tissue, meaning your muscles become better at pulling glucose out of your bloodstream after a meal. A systematic review and meta-analysis published in the journal Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice confirmed that vinegar intake meaningfully reduces postprandial glucose and insulin responses, with the strongest effects seen when vinegar is consumed with high glycemic meals. The practical protocol is simple and flexible. 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar or any vinegar, white vinegar, red wine vinegar, rice vinegar. It is the acetic acid that matters. Diluted in a large glass of water, consumed 5 to 10 minutes before eating your potato. Or even easier, dress your potato salad with an olive oil and vinegar dressing. You get the fat, the vinegar, and the cooling effect all in one delicious package. I do need to give you a serious warning here. If you take diabetes medications that already lower blood sugar, particularly metformin or insulin or sulfonylureas, adding vinegar could potentially drop your glucose too low. Discuss this with your doctor before implementing this method, and if you get the green light, start with a smaller amount like 1 teaspoon to see how your body responds. Method 3. Eating potatoes earlier in the day. This next method has nothing to do with the potato itself and everything to do with the clock hanging on your kitchen wall. When do most people eat potatoes? Dinner, right? A baked potato next to a steak, mashed potatoes swimming in gravy, French fries alongside a burger at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And that timing is a colossal metabolic mistake, not because the potato has changed, but because your body's ability to handle carbohydrates changes dramatically throughout the day. Your insulin sensitivity follows a predictable circadian rhythm. In the morning and early afternoon, your cells are most responsive to insulin. They open up readily, accept glucose efficiently, and your pancreas does not have to work very hard to clear that glucose from your blood. But as the evening approaches, insulin sensitivity drops significantly. The exact same meal that causes a moderate blood sugar spike at noon can trigger a massive, prolonged spike at 7 p.m. This has been confirmed in multiple studies on circadian glucose metabolism across all age groups, but the effect is especially pronounced in people over 60 because age-related insulin resistance is worse in the evening. So here is your simple, powerful rule. If you are going to eat potatoes, eat them at breakfast or lunch, never at dinner, never in the evening, and ideally not within 4 hours of bedtime. I know that sounds strange. Potatoes for breakfast? But think about it. A small portion of roasted potato wedges with eggs and sautéed spinach at 8 in the morning. Your body handles that completely differently than the exact same potato at 7 at night. This single change, moving your starchy carbohydrates to the first half of the day, can reduce the blood sugar impact by roughly 25 to 30% compared to eating the same food in the evening. Not because the food changed, but because your body's ability to handle it changed. The later you eat starch, the higher and longer the spike. Period. And for seniors who struggle with fasting blood sugar in the morning, shifting carbohydrates earlier in the day can also improve your overnight glucose patterns. Your evening meal should be primarily protein, non-starchy vegetables, and healthy fats. Save the potato for brunch. Method 2. Changing the order of your meal. This might be the most underrated blood sugar strategy I have ever encountered in 20 years of reviewing nutrition research. It costs absolutely nothing, takes zero extra time, requires no special ingredients, and the evidence behind it is stunning. It is called food sequencing, and it refers simply to the order in which you eat the foods on your plate. A 2025 study published in Diabetes Care, which is the official journal of the American Diabetes Association, tested what happens when people with type 2 diabetes eat their carbohydrates last versus first in a meal. Same foods, same quantities, same meal, just a different order. The results were remarkable. When participants ate their non-starchy vegetables and protein first and saved carbohydrates for last, their incremental glucose peaks were reduced by 44% compared to eating carbohydrates first. 44% reduction from a completely free intervention that takes no effort. And this was not a one-off finding. A Japanese research team studied this exact approach for 2.5 years in patients with type 2 diabetes and found sustained improvements in blood sugar control, including lower HbA1c levels just from eating vegetables before carbohydrates at every meal. Why does this work? By now, you already understand the principles. Non-starchy vegetables are rich in fiber, and protein takes time to digest. When you eat these first, they fill your stomach and create a fibrous proteinaceous barrier that significantly slows gastric emptying. By the time the potato finally arrives in your small intestine, your digestive system is already in slow mode. The glucose trickles in gradually rather than flooding in all at once, and your pancreas has time to release insulin in a controlled, efficient manner. Here is your practical rule, as simple as I can make it. Step 1. Eat your non-starchy vegetables first. Salad, broccoli, green beans, asparagus, cauliflower, zucchini, anything green or fibrous. Step 2. Eat your protein next. Chicken, fish, eggs, tofu, meat, or a generous portion of Greek yogurt. Step 3. If you can, wait 5 to 10 minutes before moving on. Just put down your fork, take a sip of water, and let that first wave of food start settling. Step 4. Now eat the potato last. You have not changed what you eat, only the order, and you get a 40+% reduction in your blood sugar spike. That is the power of working with your body's natural digestive anatomy instead of against it. Try this at your very next meal, and if you test your blood sugar, you will see the difference. Method 1. Cooling and reheating. And now we arrive at the number 1 method, the preparation technique that so many people have called the most surprising health discovery of the last decade. This is the one that actually changes the potato at a molecular level, transforming the starch itself into a form that your body cannot fully digest. When you cook a potato and then cool it down, either in the refrigerator overnight or even just for a few hours at room temperature, something remarkable happens to the starch molecules. The amylopectin, which is the highly branched, rapidly digestible starch that spikes your blood sugar so quickly, begins to recrystallize into a different physical structure called resistant starch. Resistant starch literally resists digestion by the enzymes in your small intestine. It passes through to your large intestine intact, where it acts like a prebiotic fiber, feeding your beneficial gut bacteria instead of raising your blood glucose. The research on this is solid, repeatable, and has been published for over a decade. A study in the journal Nutrition and Metabolism showed that cooling cooked potatoes increased resistant starch content by as much as 12-fold. Another clinical trial found that consuming cooled potatoes reduced the post-meal blood sugar response by approximately 33% compared to hot, freshly cooked potatoes. And here is the beautiful part that most people do not know. The effect persists even if you reheat the potato. You can cook a batch of potatoes on Sunday, let them cool completely in the refrigerator, and then reheat them throughout the week. The resistant starch remains because the recrystallization is heat stable up to normal cooking temperatures. The best practical applications of this method are potato salad made with a vinegar-based dressing, chilled roasted potato wedges eaten cold with a dip like hummus or tzatziki, or even reheated baked potatoes from yesterday's dinner. Combine this cooling technique with the vinegar dressing, with keeping the skin on, with eating protein first, with sequencing your meal, and with eating earlier in the day, and you have a multi-layered defense that can slash the blood sugar impact of potatoes by well over 50%, possibly even 70% or more. That is not a potato problem anymore. That is a potato solution. And the best part is that you can apply the exact same principle to rice, pasta, and even bread. Cook, cool, reheat. It works across the board. If you found this information valuable, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with someone who has been told to give up potatoes forever because they deserve to know the truth. Now, drop a comment below. Which of these 7 methods are you going to try first? And do you have any other dangerous foods you want us to investigate next?